Hello, this is Nathan, better known as CrazyhermitDM, and this is my podcast, The Hermit's Homebrew. Joining me today is Brent from Langeministudio that can be found on Instagram, as well as Kilk, who can be found on TikTok as well as Twitter.
Before we get any more on a side tangent,
Yes.
the Clint guy, like I've heard you tell about that. Is that the person that you've told me personally, like off microphone and off air? Like this is the guy that kind of walked you and Tove through that in his personal setting and kind of just like held your guys' hands and walked.
Yes. Yes. He was very very creative, very intellectual, very smart man. I respect him to hell and back. I have in my head of what it takes to be a perfect DM. Matt Mercer is one, but he is different, and I know he hates it when people say that. But Matt Mercer is one. Clint is one. Nate, you are one. I try to include a whole bunch of people into what it takes to be a good DM.
Yeah.
He was so creative and so more like, what's fun? If it is fun and it makes sense, we'll do that. We'll throw the rules out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it means changing settings, merging rules, whatever. And so, Clint, if you ever hear this, my hat's off to you. I love you, man. You did great. I hope you're still playing, and I hope you are still giving people the same joy of the game as you gave me. You're awesome.
You had that stereotypical experience of old wizard quest giver with the level 1 like PCs of like this guy kind of walks you through. And Clint was that stereotypical wizard quest giver.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have taken your first step into a larger world. Yeah, and it's like, oh, holy cow! Looking back on it, yeah, that started me on this road. And for better or worse, that's kind of consumed me a little bit. Yeah. And to where when I'm not playing, I feel bad. When I am playing, I am so energized and excited and creative. To where I know Toy Bars brought this up earlier. What's next? What could happen next? Oh my gosh, what if this happens? And that kind of terrifies me sometimes because I don't want to tell Nate, because I don't want him to throw that back at me.
With you, Chase, though, like what I know you started, like I was your first DM. You started here with me, like at level 10. What was like what got? I know Nick kind of like was your segue, like not a gatekeeper, but what got you like into like the role playing hobby?
I've always been a fantasy fan. I was a Warhammer fantasy player. So my understanding of lore, being a fantasy fan, right? I read tons of the Drist books. I've read The Hobbit. I've read all those super nerdy books from back in the day that we talk about. And I had friends of mine when I was in middle school who played. But they were friends of mine that were at my mother's house, and I lived with my father at the time. And they used to tell me all the cool, fun things that they would do, and I was always like, man, that's really cool. Like, I wish I could play, but at the time I was young and I was splitting my time between two houses, so I never really found a group to play. And that continued throughout mostly my adult life, from when I went into the military and all this other stuff. It was just kind of like a second thing that I liked. Right.
When you were a child, if I am not mistaken, were you like kind of like, for lack of a better word, a military brat, or was your parent?
Not really.
Or you moved around a lot, if I remember right.
Yeah, I was born at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. My dad was in the Army at the time. But that's all I really remember from that. By the time that I was old enough to start becoming, my own person, my dad was no longer in the military.
Yeah.
So for me, it started back then, right? I was always steeped into the orcs and the elves and gnomes and all this stuff. So I was always looking into these fantasy worlds and all this other stuff. So it was always good to me. And I moved around a lot most of my life until I came here. So I was finally in a position where Nick was like, "Oh, my buddy Nathan runs this. I would love to do that." And I'm like, "Oh, I want to be D&D so much. Like I want to play it. Like I've wanted to play it for my whole life." And he brought me in, and I just jumped like right into it. It was like feet first. Like I went right into playing Kilk. And yes, my first character is named after me. And I've loved it ever since. Like even when that campaign ended, Nathan, and the group split up, like I wanted to continue. I wanted to keep playing. And I've said it before, I just didn't know how to do that. Because at the time, I mean, you were my DM, but you were an acquaintance of mine, right? And I knew that you were going through a difficult time. And, you know, my buddy Nick at the time didn't want to continue playing that. And I was like, okay, cool.
Through personal issues, and COVID did happen, unfortunately. The pandemic happened, and it just really put a strain, and just like the thing kind of petered out, and just like I just kind of sat there, just like I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And so that was, for me, it was one of those things where I've always wanted to play. I was always steeped in the lore of, you know, all the fantasy worlds out there. I played, my archetypal character is Kilk.
Yeah.
I am, to be completely honest with you, I'm probably a ranger player at heart.
Yeah.
And so it was very easy for me to jump in with you guys on that. And so for me, it was really cool. I was glad I got the chance to do it. So far, it's been fantastic fun. I love playing inside your world. And like, I can't wait to start DMing personally. Like I'm one of those people that wants to do it. And I think when you guys see the campaign that I have planned and in store for you guys, it's going to be really fun, especially if you kind of figure out the inspiration from it. And I'm going to see if you can.
Challenge.
Yeah, I think you will, to be honest. I think you will figure out the inspiration from it before anybody else. And it'll be a good time. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'm totally stoked to continue playing through this campaign. I do like Toy Bar. I think he's a fun character, but I have two other characters ready to go. Yeah. So I will tell you this. I will tell you this. I'm playing one of two characters in your campaign. In the next campaign, and it's going to either be I might bring Rumlock back. You didn't meet Rumlock, but he's basically the dwarf slayer from Warhammer.
From Warhammer Fantasy, yeah.
I think we talked in the previous episode. I think on our episode 2 of our podcast of like he's the quintessential dwarf barbarian berserker.
Nice. With a death wish.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other character is a grave cleric of the fates. So in Nathan's world, the fates are the Norns. So it's going to be a grave cleric of the Norn, and he's going to be a changeling. So he's going to be a changeling where he basically is sent to ensure that people live or die.
Okay, and that they move on. That for the campaign I am planning, find a way for your character, whichever one you play, to be in the realm of Svartalheim, to where it's more, from my understanding with Nate, is that it's underground, mainly the Underdark, essentially, for Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, well, Svartalheim in our
my grave player can show up anywhere because his entire thing is to ensure people are living and dying and following what the Norns have foretold, basically. He's there so he's a changeling because if you were good in life, he would take on a more, I guess in this world we'll call it a more Valkyrie-esque look when you die. But if you were bad in life, or you're gonna say go to hell in our world, he would take on a more demonic appearance when you were dying. And
okay.
so
cool.
I'm going to be rolling a ton of fate dice because
Nice.
he has
Probably a
to
lot of insight
decide.
checks, too.
Yeah, because
Alright.
he has to decide, is it your time to die?
So
If it
it's
is
probably
your
about-
time to die, he will not heal you. So it's
about
going to get
10
real
minutes,
fun.
Probably about 10 minutes left in our podcast.
Okay.
I will say, with Svartalfheim, with the lore, I have one more question to ask after this, but like Svartalfheim, like with our lore, is like it is an underground thing. There is a surface to Svartalfheim, which back in the first age, the light and the dark elves had this massive war that causes basically magical radiation to basically permeate the surface to where they had to go underground. If that helps you too with whatever you have planned.
For me, I mean, I remember talking
Magical
to you about that
radiation, you
earlier.
say?
Magical
that's
radiation.
basically like it's in Forgotten Realms. It's called the Phosphorus or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. It is used in that Out of Abyss campaign, which I do love that campaign book. But basically, this phosphorus or this magical radiation makes the surface of Svartalfheim uninhabitable, and so they've gone down below ground.
And yes, I remember us talking about that. So that is actually one of the cruxes of the campaign, is this magical radiation that leaks into the tunnels of Svartalfheim, but also the players will go to the surface.
Yeah.
Because something happens.
Yeah.
Plot point that they now have to deal with it. And it is something that a lot of the players, or I'm sorry, characters in their living memory don't have. Even if they are dark elves, they won't remember this because they weren't alive when it happened. But it will be something that hopefully will be able to fit into the setting at large, all that fun stuff. But I will tell each person that plays in this, they will need to have a reason for one to be in the realm of the dark elves, in Svartalfheim, and they will have to have a reason to listen to the nobility of Svartalfheim, if there is such a thing. Nate and I will have to talk about that. But why you will have to, one, be there, and two, follow the reasons to go to the surface. And yes, mercenary will be a thing, but meh.
So there's one, as we're wrapping up, there is one movie that kind of reminds me of that. It's called, it has like Bill Murray and like a couple actors and actresses in it from like the mid 2000s or like 2010, called City of Ember, which is like a post-apocalyptic movie where they've had to go underground or in these tunnels, and like the surface is uninhabitable. I'd be interested to see, because it comes to find out that Bill Murray plays this mayor or whatever that's very corrupt, and he's held these people underground to control them while the surface is habitable again, and he's just told them like, "Hey."
Oh, he's lied to him.
Yeah. If I remember the movie right, sorry viewers if I get that wrong. It is a 15-ish-year-old movie. But I want to ask you one guy's final question as we're wrapping up. For anyone that's getting into the hobby, what would be your number one tip to them, since we're talking about our introductions to the hobby? What would you recommend they lean into, or what would be your recommended tip? Kilk,
yeah.
If you're first getting into it, I would say play yourself. That's my recommendation for people brand new. If you don't know anything about fantasy, you don't know anything about D&D, you don't know anything about anything, play yourself. Play a character that is, whether it's it's a mage, whether it's a ranger, whether it's a warlock, it doesn't matter. But make that character's personality you, because that allows you to focus more on the rule sets and learning what to do in different instances, and takes away the I don't know what to do. Right? It takes away, I don't know what my character would do. Well, if you're playing yourself, but let's just say as your character, you would say, oh, well, I would do this in this situation, so I'm doing this. And so you can focus more on rule sets. You can focus more on understanding turns and your player sheet and the copious amounts of spells that you have if you pick a spell casting class, and all the different options that you have in combat and in role playing and stuff like that. Like it makes it much easier for the brand new player, I feel like, if you pick things that you would do on your own moral standing versus trying to role play a character who has an opposite moral standing of you.
Especially like 5th edition, who's very beginner friendly.
Yeah. So that would be that would be my recommendation. That's what I give to Rama, and I told her that the other day. She felt that she didn't play last session very well, and I was like, well, if you're struggling to figure out what your choices would be, just decide what you would do in that situation and move forward with that.
That, or just like even if you're role playing yourself, like ask.
Toy bar's a little bit me.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty easygoing, happy-go-lucky guy, and
either that or Rama sits next to Tove or sits next to you, Toy Bar. Turn that person to your left. Say, what would like as Rama? I'm asking you, what should we do in this situation? You just turn that person next to you, because we're all we're like, she is the newest one, but as a veteran, lean to that person on your left a little bit, because we can't. I will give Rama credit. She is she is new. She's very blessed with the group we have, with the knowledge we have, that she can lean on any one of us, and it can branch out.
And as a veteran player, quote unquote, I gotta say to Rama, she's doing great. I have not felt like she's held us back in any way, shape, or form. She's not afraid to ask questions. She'll look at us and go, "What are you guys talking about?" And that's really good. So from my point of view, to a new player, do not feel like you have to be perfect, because no one ever will be. There is multiple editions, multiple experiences, multiple ideas of what D&D is. Maybe even not D&D, but it's any other game. Do not be afraid to go into the unknown. Yeah. Yes, you may not know the rules. Yes, you may not know the setting or anything. But understand that everyone here is here to have fun. We're here to create a story together. We're here to go on this adventure with I was talking to Tove the other night, to where even when it comes to Rama and she looks at us and goes, "What are you guys talking about? I don't know what we're doing." I've looked at Toy Bar and been like, I have no clue what I'm doing. And I've been doing this since the early aughts. I have no idea what our next step is. I have no idea where the next leg of the story is going. I don't know. And that's the fun. Let's make these decisions. Let's go and do this quest or whatever. And let's react to what the DM throws in front of us. And when it comes to all of us making our decisions or where to go, that's where the fun is.
And since we are using Rama as like a footnote almost, because she is the newest character, like there is a lot of times where she looks like a deer caught in headlights and she goes, "I don't know what's happening." The upside of that is she's playing a character with amnesia.
True.
Like if you're to start out and play a character with amnesia, that would probably be the biggest benefit, because especially if you're playing in a homebrew setting that you don't know that, play a character with amnesia. Lean into that, because that will give the dungeon master more agency to kind of feed you, like spoon feed you lore here and there, and hopefully you catch on.
And that's also the good part for the other characters that maybe not necessarily playing in a setting that they're aware of, especially homebrew. This amnesia character also gives them the benefit of the doubt, to where, oh, hey, you're learning alongside them. And so, okay, you can apply your own experiences and your knowledge of the rule set or whatever. But now that you have this amnesia character, you can grow along with them. And now you're creating a true cohabitive story.
Yeah. As for me, my number one recommendation is, obviously, if you're playing in a homebrew setting, don't be afraid to talk to your dungeon master.
Yes.
99% of the time, unless the person is toxic, and there are toxic dungeon masters out there. We hear plenty of stories about them out there on the land of the internet. Talk to them, especially if they're playing their homebrew setting where it is them. They will talk your head off about their own setting, and
they'll talk too much.
Yeah, because you are taking an interest in something they've built.
Absolutely.
And it will make them feel good. I know from personal experience with Rama that when she asked me stuff about very sometimes obscure things about my own setting, or just very common things about my personal homebrew setting, I feel good because that shows that something I've built, she's taking an interest in. Besides, the only other thing that I recommend is, like what I said, play a character with amnesia, maybe. If not, and like what Kilk said, or Chase, don't be afraid to be yourself in times of uncertainty.
Yes.
Every character you play will be an extension of yourself. No matter if you're playing a sci-fi RPG and you're playing an alien race, the Vulcan, that's totally emotionally and numb, it will be an extension of you. So don't be afraid to lean into that. Don't be afraid to role play. Just don't be afraid. And if you unfortunately are playing in a group where they make you feel ashamed of putting yourself out there, that might not be the right group for you, unfortunately. And it might take some time to find a new group, as it all. Brent has 20 years experience. I have 15. Case has 5 years. We've taken breaks in there for a year or so. And we've all come back to it just because it's that addiction of that role-playing high of we need that, I'm not sure what the word, of just being somebody else, that escapism.
Yeah, escapism, immersion, whatever. Yeah. And you brought up a really good point. When it comes to a new player, another really good thing that I could say is do not be afraid to say no. I am not comfortable with this. I don't want this to happen. I do not want to play my character this way. Do not be afraid to express yourself and set boundaries.
Oh,
like I said before, we are here to have fun and create a story together. That cannot happen if you are feeling left out, uncomfortable, negligent, or
especially in today's day and age. We should be able to be comfortable with the person across the table.
Absolutely.
Communication is at an incredible rate and high right now.
Yes.
If not an over communication some days, but we won't get into that. But that would be my recommendation, is just don't be afraid. You're gonna have that little bit of imposter syndrome at first. I know Rufus, when he first started as a rogue, he had an 18 dex, and he was playing level 3 or 4, and he came to me and he goes, I don't feel he should have that much dex. He's only level 2, 3, or 4, or something like that. And I'm like, he shouldn't be that good. And I'm like, no. Maybe he's just that good. Maybe he's David Bowie from the Labyrinth that just spins the ball in his hand like crazy.
Yeah, those 4 balls in the crystal balls in his hand. Yeah, he's a rogue for a reason. Yeah. You're not a rogue. You don't have an 18 dex because you're a rogue. You have an 18 dex that's why you went to be a rogue. You found out that you're good at pickpocketing. You found out that you're good at sneaking or whatever. Oh, I'm going to lean to where my strengths are. Okay, that's cool. That's fine.
Or Rama started out with a very high wisdom. Yeah. She played an investigator. Maybe she's a Sherlock Holmes. That's the reason why she has such a thing. She's very intuitive, or whatever the character is, at least. Any other things that you have to say, Coke?
No, I don't think so. I think these things come with time for people as they dive into something new.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Is that you will not be perfect right at the gate. I like I said, I started playing back in early aughts. I will fully admit that I am not an expert at this game. Every session, I learned something, or I found out a mistake that I made. But that's the fun of it.
And before we wrap up, I will say one more thing, and then we will actually wrap up here. If you're rolling for stats, or you have like an 8 in a particular stat, lean into that flaw. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong if you are like a big brute with an 8 dex. You're just clumsy, but you're a very strong brute.
Yes.
Or a cleric with an 8 dex, or a barbarian with an 8 with intelligence. You just lean into that. Okay, you're a tiny bit simple.
Yeah, a 10 is dead average. The lowest you can possibly be is a 3. If you look at the monsters in the monster manual, if you go back to the very basic creatures, they have like a 3 or a 4 intelligence.
Yeah.
That's fine. It doesn't mean you're inept or going to hold the party back in any way. That just means that that's not where you lean. Your character's strong at.
Yeah.
But have fun with it.
So if you're a barbarian with an 8 dex, then that's the time for the rogue to shine.
Hey everyone, I'd like to thank you so much for watching this episode of the Hermit's Homebrew. We have another episode coming out next Wednesday. Please like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast and support us as we continue to level up and grow.